A woman called Sarah brought a furry creature to a pet groomer. She told the groomer, called James, that it was a dog and needed to be groomed. James, not suspecting anything, took the creature and began to groom it. As he was cutting the creature's fur, he was shocked to discover that it was not a dog at all. The groomer turned pale and asked the woman, "Is this what I think it is?" As James brushed the dog's hair, he began to grow suspicious. There were some characteristics of this creature that didn't line up with the characteristics of a dog. But he pushed his thoughts aside and continued grooming. Or at least, he tried. Because something caught his eye that he couldn't ignore. As he groomed the dog, the thought of it not being a dog grew more and more in the back of his mind. So the groomer decided to ask Sarah a few standard questions everyone with a dog should know. But when Sarah failed to answer the questions correctly, he knew something was up. Suddenly, the energy in the room shifted, and Sarah began to look very nervous. She could probably sense the groomer's suspicion. So, the groomer asked her one final question. "Where did you find this creature?" But Sarah's answer shocked him. But what did Sarah bring to the groomer? And where did she find the creature? But before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. Sarah had always loved exploring the forest that surrounded her small village. She had lived there her entire life and knew every inch of the dense, tangled wilderness like the back of her hand. But today, she decided to take a new route that would lead to her discovery of the dog. Despite her extensive knowledge of the forest, Sarah was always on the lookout for new and interesting creatures to discover. She had a particular love for wild animals, and she spent much of her free time studying them and learning about their habits and behaviors. But nothing could have prepared her for what she would find today. After walking this new route, Sarah came across a small cave hidden among the trees. It was a place she had never noticed before, and it seemed to call out to her with a sense of mystery and adventure. She simply had this odd feeling that she should check inside it. So she did. Without hesitation, Sarah made her way into the cave, her curiosity piqued by the unknown. The cave was dark and cold, but that didn't matter. She had always loved to explore and discover new things, and this seemed like the perfect opportunity. She was just moments away when she encountered something very unusual. As Sarah made her way deeper into the cave, she began to feel a sense of unease wash over her. The air was cool and musty, and the darkness seemed to press in on her from all sides. But despite her growing sense of dread, Sarah refused to turn back. She was determined to see what lay at the heart of the cave. As she pushed on, Sarah finally reached a large chamber at the cave's center. She was quite overwhelmed by the idea that this cave would be this big. She had never been into a cave like this, which impressed her. But not much later, this feeling would turn into fear. And then it happened. When Sarah walked further, she suddenly stumbled upon this strange and peculiar-looking animal, and was immediately intrigued. The creature had a long, snout-like nose, a shaggy fur coat, and large, floppy ears that seemed to flop in every direction. It was unlike any animal Sarah had ever seen, and she knew that she had to get a closer look. Despite the creature's creepy eyes, Sarah could see that it was friendly and harmless when getting closer, and she felt a sudden surge of affection for the animal. She knew that she had to help it, but how? It seemed like a harmless dog, but she wasn't sure of it, and hoped she wasn't in danger here. As she carefully approached the animal, Sarah could see the devastating state it was in. It was covered in dirt and mud, and its fur was matted and tangled. It seemed to be in need of some help, and Sarah knew that she had to do something to help it. Sarah gently and carefully scooped the animal up in her arms and carried it back to her home. The animal was not afraid and allowed Sarah to pick it up with ease. Sarah walked out of the cave, but as soon as the dog came into the sunlight, something strange happened. Panicked by the sunlight, the helpless animal jumped out of Sarah's arms and sprinted back into the cave. Sarah didn't think twice before running after the animal. However, she soon realized it had stopped and hid in a corner. She gently picked it up and slowly went back outside, step by step, so that little by little the pitiful creature would get used to the sunlight. Fortunately, the animal eventually adapted to the sunlight. Now that Sarah could see the animal even better, she was genuinely unsure whether it was a dog or not. She had a strong suspicion while in the cave, but now that she was outside, she seriously doubts that. She ultimately chose to bring it home. As she walked through the village with the creature in tow, people stopped and stared in amazement at the strange-looking creature. Some even asked her if it was a dog, but Sarah just smiled and shrugged her shoulders, not wanting to give away the animal's true identity. Sarah didn't even know this. Finally, back home. When Sarah arrived home, she carefully placed the animal on a soft blanket and set to work grooming it. She spent hours carefully combing its fur and washing away the dirt and mud covering its body. As she worked, the animal began to look more and more like the beautiful and exotic creature it truly was. Finally, after several hours of grooming, Sarah was finished, and the animal looked absolutely stunning. Its fur was soft and shiny, and it had a look of contentment on its face that Sarah had never seen before. She quickly grabbed her laptop to find out what kind of animal she had taken to her home. She opened her laptop and began frantically looking for pictures of animals that looked like the one she had found in the cave. She searched online for several hours without yielding any results, so she had to think of another method she could use to determine what kind of animal this was. Calling a dog groomer, Sarah knew she had to find a way to show the world this amazing and rare creature she had discovered in the forest. So she decided to take it to a local dog groomer to see what they would make of it. She searched for dog groomers on the internet and called the one nearby. Fast forward to the dog groomer. Sarah quickly got into the car and rushed to the dog groomer. She noticed that it was very busy on the way, but this did not make her stop as she quickly made all those cars catch up. She was just too excited about what this beautiful animal could be. As Sarah confidently walked into the groomer's shop with the animal in tow, the groomers were absolutely amazed by the creature's beauty and unique appearance. They had never seen anything like it before, and they were eager to learn more about it. But the outcome would surprise all of them. Where am I looking at? After much questioning and investigation, the groomer finally realized that the animal was not a dog after all. Sarah could tell by the dog groomer's look that he clearly had a lot of questions racing through his mind. And when he looked at Sarah, Sarah knew that something could be wrong. As they began to question Sarah about the animal, they began to suspect it was something more than just a strange-looking dog. And after Sarah failed to answer some of their questions as they expected, they called the police, and before long, a team of officers arrived on the scene. The police were just as amazed by the creature as the groomers had been, and they quickly began to investigate. They ran tests and consulted with experts, trying to determine the animal's true identity. Sarah somehow felt sorry for the little animal that the police were doing all the testing on him. As she waited in the shop for the creature to be groomed, Sarah heard a loud noise and turned to see the creature escaping through an open window. She immediately realized that something was wrong, and the creature was in danger. Determined to help the animal, Sarah set out to find it. Sarah hoped the police would assist her in the search, but when she approached the officers, they refused to provide any information or assistance. They looked with stern faces at Sarah, and she was left on her own to track down the creature. So, she returned to the only place the animal would return to. Sarah returned to the forest and searched for hours, following tracks and scanning the trees for any sign of the creature. Sarah felt helpless, as she couldn't find any trace of the creature. She assumed it would be in complete fear after the police ran all these tests on him. As the sun began to set, Sarah started to lose hope. She had been searching for so long, and she still hadn't found any sign of the creature. But just when she was about to turn back and go home, she heard a faint rustling in the bushes. She froze, listening intently, and then she saw a flash of movement from the corner of her eye. Sarah's heart raced as she followed the movement, carefully making her way through the underbrush on her hands and knees. But when she finally saw the creature again, she couldn't believe her eyes. Sarah saw the creature huddled in a small clearing with its newborns. Fearing they'd be taken away, she decided to bring them home for protection. Upon arriving, she noticed several police officers outside her house. To avoid detection, she parked at a distance and entered through the back. For a while, everything seemed fine, until the creatures grew restless at night, making noise. Then came a knock at the door. The police, responding to a noise complaint, insisted on entering. Despite Sarah's resistance, they pushed past her and discovered the creatures. Her heart sank. She knew she was in trouble. The officers arrested her, and as she was escorted to the police car, she watched helplessly as they aggressively handled the creatures. At the station, Sarah was treated like a criminal, placed in an interrogation room. When questioned, she remained silent, demanding a lawyer. The detectives became more aggressive, but she knew better than to speak without representation. Finally, her lawyer arrived and assured her she had broken no laws. He took charge, explaining everything to the officers. Eventually, they realized they had no grounds to hold her, and she was released. Sarah pleaded with the officers, insisting she had only wanted to help the creatures. They hesitated, then offered to tell her the truth if she signed a confidentiality contract. Without hesitation, she agreed. The officers revealed the creatures were a rare breed of prehistoric dog believed to be extinct. Just then, another officer rushed in, reporting that one of the creatures was unwell. Sarah followed them to another room, relieved to find it was a false alarm. In the end, she was allowed to keep the creatures under the condition that she find them new homes. Grateful, she dedicated herself to ensuring they were well cared for and loved.